listening to The Breakfast Show here on Faith FM. Did you say Melbourne at top of 49 degrees?
So Melbourne's a top of 45 degrees, but we just heard in the air news that it could get to tops of 49 somewhere else in the state of Victoria, which is a record high in Australia.
That is unbelievable. Imagine 49 degrees.
I'm very glad I'm not in Melbourne right now or Victoria.
Very good. And we were talking about the story of Joseph in our first segment. If you missed that, you can check us out. There is going to be a podcast of this show released right after the program, and you can catch up with everything that we have said. And still to come, we are going to be talking about why would someone implant their ear in their foot? Like, how is that even possible? We are also going to be having new quiz questions. We're going to be talking about persecution against Christian families in India. It's a bit of a shocking and very sad story, this one, but important. Needs to be said, needs to be told. We also have Justin Luhman coming today for the interview. He's going to be letting us know what's going on in the world, particularly inside of America. Is there going to be a civil war? Is there a civil war looming? Well, we're going to ask that to Justin and see what he thinks about it, because the unrest in Minnesota are reaching some unprecedented levels. We are now going to get to our third quiz question of the day. Producer Shell, can you please tell us what it is?
According to 1 Samuel 13, in the beginning of King Saul's reign, where did the Israelites have to go to sharpen their axes, their coulters, and their other farming tools?
Okay, can you ask the question one more time?
We've got a correct answer from Lindsay already. Well done. According to 1 Samuel 13, in the beginning of King Saul's reign, where did the Israelites have to go to sharpen their axes, their coulters, and other farming tools? Very well done from Lindsay. Quick on that one. 0491 064 669.
Yep.
0491 064 669. According to 1 Samuel 13, in the beginning of King Saul's reign, where did the Israelites have to go to sharpen all of their farming tools, their axes, and everything like that?
Yeah, that story, when we get to give the answer to that one, has a lot to do with modern-day geopolitics.
Yeah, it does, actually.
It does.
It's fascinating. All right, shall we move on? I have a story to share.
Okay, yeah, tell me.
So, I want you to try to describe what you're seeing in this image for everyone today, please.
Look, I am seeing a very strange image. I am seeing a foot, like a woman's foot, and on the top of the foot there is like an ear. I actually thought that this was AI, an AI generated, very crazy picture. But Lindsay's telling me that it's actually not AI at all.
Yeah. So what we have here is an interesting surgery that's taken place. So this woman, her name is Sun, and she's from somewhere in China. She had a unfortunate event take place at work, and there was an industrial accident where her ear was torn off. I don't know exactly how. But then instead of putting it back on her head, the surgeons decided to put it on her foot. Why do you think they would do that?
Look, the only reasonable explanation that I can think of is that they weren't able to perform like this head surgery because it would be very complicated and difficult and hard. But they're trying to preserve the ear and trying to connect the vessels, and like the foot appeared to be the best place to do that.
Oh, yeah, you're onto it. So that's exactly what happened. So instead of reattaching it to her head, apparently the site of the injury was too damaged for reattachment. They were like, well, let's try to save the ear. It needs to be attached somewhere on the body for it to continue to live as an organ. And so they decided to attach it to the foot, because apparently the top of the foot has a lot of similarities as far as skin thickness and blood vessel flow, and feet tend to have a much better, I guess, rate of blood flow than the top of your head. I guess gravity certainly helps the blood to be flowing to the tissue that's attached to the top of the foot. And so that's what they did. They attached it to the top of her foot so it could stay alive, so the organs could stay viable until the side of her head was healed enough and ready to reattach
Wow.
the
So
ear.
has she had the final surgery already?
Yeah, so she had this ear stuck to the top of her foot for 5 months.
Wow. It's funny because when people say, hey, talk to my hand, she could actually say, hey, talk to my feet.
Yeah, talk to the foot.
Talk to my foot here. My foot is hearing you.
She can smell colors now. I don't know. No, so she's got this ear attached to the top of her foot for 5 months, and she had to wear a shoe that was way too many sizes too big for her in order to protect the ear while it was healing and attached to her foot. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on here medically. And then 5 months later, the doctors had a look at it all and decided, you know what? The ear is doing well. The side of the head is doing well. There was a minute there where they thought, oh, maybe the ear is going to have necrosis. Like, it's just not going to survive. It might, fall off and die, basically. But it didn't. It survived. It's all good. And so they've now detached it from the foot and reattached it to the side of her head. And now she's good as new.
Wow. Can she actually hear?
Well, I'm guessing because it was the outside part of the ear and not the inner, eardrum situation. She probably could hear the whole time, but in a distorted way because the outer ear actually does help with hearing sounds correctly and knowing where they are in space. But I think she can hear better now with the outside part attached.
Wow. Imagine that.
Yeah. So it's not just for looks, it's for, it's needed. God has created us with ears for a reason and the outer ears for a reason. But it actually just reminds me of that story in the Bible where Jesus is being arrested and Peter comes through with a sword, all trying to protect his good mate Jesus, and he ends up chopping off somebody's ear. But
Yes.
that guy didn't have...
It was Malcolm, the high priest's servant.
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't have to wait 5 months and reattach the ear to his foot and then take it off and put it to the side of his head. No, Jesus actually stuck it back on and healed him in that moment. So that's just what came to mind as I was reading that this morning. But what do you think of this medical surgery? I think it's just really...
Props to the doctors who really thought outside of the box here. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think that so many doctors could have said, look, there's nothing we can do to save
Yeah.
it. They tried something. The lady would probably really look like a little bit of a, eyes would be turning on and people would be thinking
Yeah.
that it's a bit of a freak show going
Yeah.
on. But at the same time, it was medically necessary and it saved her a year.
I think it's really great that, God is our healer. God is our creator. He's our healer, but he's also called specific people to have a gift of healing, and not just in a magical, miraculous type of way, but in a way of giving people skills and abilities and creative ways of thinking. And throughout the Bible, we see places where, God has given someone an idea to have a poultice of figs to heal a boil, or Jesus would get mud and spit and put it on somebody's eyes. It wasn't always just I pronounce you healed and people are healed. No, sometimes there's a process and sometimes there's really creative and interesting things that go into that process. And I just really love that God has called certain people to be doctors and he's given them years of training and he's given them ideas of how to creatively approach medical situations.
Yeah, I love it. That's a great example. I also think about Bible passages when God is talking to the Israelites and saying, hey, you have ears, but you're not listening.
Yeah. You want to use them?
And Jesus often uses this in the beginning of parables. He says, he who has ears to hear,
Let him
listen.
hear.
Let him
Yeah.
hear what the Spirit has to say.
Don't let it go through one ear and out the other.
No, because
let it stop for a while in between.
That's right. I think that we have a lot of people that are deaf.
Yeah.
Even though they
deaf.
have both ears, but they are spiritually deaf. They cannot discern the spiritual things. They're not interested in spiritual things. They think that the immediate things of this world are better and more important than the things of eternal consequences to them, which is really crazy to think about it.
Yeah.
Because normally we think about our long-term future with a lot of care. People think about, hey, what am I going to do after I retire? What am I going to do with my finances? Or you can say, I'm not going to eat junk food all day long because this is going to damage my health long term. So we are capable of thinking long term. And so why can't we be capable of thinking long term in the longest term possible, which is eternity? And the reality is, the Bible says that this blindness is a spiritual blindness that Satan is trying to cause, and the only way to get out of that blindness or deafness, in this sense, is by a miracle by God.
Yeah.
But it requires a heart to say, you know what, God, I have been deaf all my life, but today I actually want to hear what you have to say. Please open the eyes of my heart, open the ears of my soul, so I can hear, I can understand, I can listen, and I can apply.
This reminds me of a passage in the book of Revelation. I believe it's Revelation chapter 3. And it's talking to the lukewarm church, the church of Laodicea. And Jesus is saying to them, hey, look, you guys are blind and you're naked and you're poor and all these things, but you think you can see, you think you're dressed well, you think you've got everything that you need spiritually, but what you're really missing is like any self-awareness. So it's important that we're first aware of our spiritual state of being. And second of all, he says, come and buy from me all these things. I have them on offer, but it does take investment.
Yeah.
So come, recognize your need and come to me. I have what you need. Come and get it.
That's right. And you know what? God says, come to me. You can buy things even without money. Mm-hmm. In the book of Isaiah, I think in around chapter 50, God talks about, come buy from me. Mm-hmm. Come even without money. So how can we buy things without money? Because you could say, oh, I don't have money to give God. Mm-hmm. How can I buy all of these things? Like, how much would it cost for me to be able to see things spiritually and to be able to listen to God's voice? And the answer to that question from the Bible perspective is they don't cost you anything in terms of money, financial terms, but it costs you in terms of time.
It does.
You have to prioritize, you have to desire.
Priority.
But God has promised, look, if you search me with all your heart, you will find me.
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
We are now going to reveal the answer to the previous quiz question. So, Producer Shell, where did people have to go when they didn't have blacksmiths in town?
So they went to the Philistines. The Philistines was controlling all of those kind of things.
Can you imagine having to go to your enemies to sharpen your swords when you don't even have a sword? You
cannot even have swords.
Yeah, they wouldn't allow them. Like, I can imagine you have a sword and you take it to your enemies and they're like, just confiscate. Yeah. They're like, that's our sword now. You're not getting it back.
And the world is really feeling that now, because this is what happens when you sort of outsource critical military-related or defense industries to other countries, and these countries become not your friends. I'll give you one example. But for example, in America, in the United States, most of their steel was being produced overseas, meaning that if China or Japan, they decide, hey, we don't want you to have tanks anymore, there you go. You cannot have tanks. And it's not that you can just start a steel processing plant, steel factory overnight.
No, it doesn't work that way.
The second one is rare earths and batteries.
Yeah.
Everything now requires batteries. Most of these batteries are being made in China. Mm-hmm. This is one of the reasons why the United States is so particular.
Keen to stay friends-ish with China.
Keen to stay friends with China, like the LCD displays and all these kinds of things that go into all kinds of appliances. And this is one of the reasons also why the United States is so eager to secure rare earth minerals for themselves, because the rare earth minerals are used to, among other things, produce batteries.
Yeah. I wonder what's in Venezuela.
Yes. Well, a bit of a different story, but similar concept.
Yeah.
I want to talk about a situation that happened just 2 weeks ago, Lindsay, and I have a bit of, it is going to be a confronting story.
Tell us.
That story happened in the province, in one of the provinces of India. I'm going to find it here in 1 second. And what happened is that there were a mob of 20 people. And these 20 people, they issued an ultimatum to 6 Christian families comprising about 25 people. And they said, look, you either recant of your faith or we are going to kill you.
Wow.
And so these families, I believe that they went to pray. And next day, the mob came back and they are realizing, their family did not recant.
Okay.
They say, we're not abandoning our faith. Mm-hmm. And as a response of that, this angry mob armed with hammers and mallets and just like rudimentary stuff, even stones. They decided to demolish their house, which was not a super difficult task to do. We're talking about like a remote village in the middle of nowhere in India, and
the houses probably aren't constructed the same way
no,
as they are here
like
in Australia.
Mud and brick houses. But they entered the house. They took all of their belongings. They just chucked everything in the lawn outside, and they destroyed the house. They destroyed the house, until there was nothing left. All of these people's houses were absolutely left completely demolished. So much so that the families now they are having to live in the rubble. And we're talking about them being in the middle of winter, super cold.
Is this far north in India, or do you know where it is?
Yeah, I'll get the exact geographical place for you in a second here.
Okay.
It just escaped me from my notes.
Yeah.
But what happens that 2 days later, the family decided to go to the police. All these families, the Christian families, decided to go to the police. Say, surely the police was going to do something about it. And they came to the police station, and what the police officer said, instead of helping them, they threatened them. And they says, it is your fault that your house got destroyed because you decided to become a Christian anyway.
Wow.
In the first place. They used to be Hindus, and then they became Christian. And he said, it's your fault. If you haven't become Christians, nothing of this would have happened to you. And if you don't repent, actually, we as the government, we can actually take your IDs and stop giving you your government food rations.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Like they're meant to be looking after them and helping
They're meant to be
keep
looking
the
after them.
peace,
Yes.
but no.
Now, it didn't stop there because after that, the police decided to go to the house of the pastor who was ministering to these families and say, hey, what business do you have here in talking about in converting using your superstition to convert Hindus into the superstition of Christianity? So they were inquiring and interrogating the pastor.
Wow.
And the police says, you are not allowed to visit these families. If you go and visit these families, you are going to go to jail.
The Christian families?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, so the pastor is not allowed to go and visit their Christian families.
And I'm guessing they're being watched at this point.
Yeah. So until yesterday, the family was still just really struggling. They're trying to make through winter without a roof over their heads. And there is nothing, no one there to help them. They
Or
are going to be
encourage them.
trying to escalate the matter to the higher courts in the country, but nobody there in the state, but nobody there is really
Helping or caring or...
yeah, nobody's very confident that the
Wow.
government is going to do anything. Now, in India, about half of the states, they have about 40 different states, and in about half of them, they have what they call these anti-conversion laws. And these anti-conversion laws are at the heart of what's going on. Because these anti-conversion laws, they say this, look, you cannot convert anyone into a different religion by the means of force, trickery, or threat.
Okay.
Okay. But what happens is that a lot of people, when they have, like, for example, different village grudges or anything, they accuse Christians in particular of, hey, they are trying to force me into converting to their religion.
Right.
And the problem that's happening in a lot of these places is you are considered guilty first until you are proven innocent.
Wow. Okay.
Which is
bit back to front how we
bit
like
back
do
to
it.
front how we do it here in Australia. So it's very easy for a mob to come and to say, hey, all these people, they're trying to convert us, they're going against the law. So, until they find out that that was not the case, well, they have already mobilized a mob to destroy these people's houses. Sometimes these people have to attend courts. They have to leave their jobs. They get stigmatized. They lose a lot of money trying to defend themselves, even if they are considered innocent at the end. Their lives are already devastated by then. So what can we do about it? Well, there's a few things we can do. One of them, we can pray for them. And when I say pray for them, I don't pray that they won't find any hardships anymore.
Yeah.
Or I wouldn't even say pray that God will take care of these families, because, look, God knows they need all these things. Jesus says, look, you don't need to really pray about, what food are you going to eat, what clothes are we going to wear, because your Father in heaven knows you need these things.
Everyone needs that. He knows. He made us that way.
But Jesus says, pray that the kingdom of heaven and its righteousness will come first. And then all these things will come to you. So what I want us to pray for this family is that God is going to use their example, their faithfulness, to inspire others as to ask, okay, who is this Jesus that if you threaten people to take their lives, if you destroy their houses, if you completely persecute them, they still think that Jesus is better than anything else that this world has got to offer.
Yeah.
So 2 things to pray for them. One, that they will stay strong in the middle of this persecution, because it's not easy at all to be able to stay firm. They need to have like a very solid faith in this to endure that. And then number 2, that out of their example, all of their, I would even say martyrdom, even though they were still alive, they are martyrs, meaning they are witnesses about Jesus and about the wickedness of this world, that through their example, more people will get to know Jesus and will get to place their trust in him.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that?
Man, I've never had to live through something like that before, and I think a lot of us haven't, and we just don't have, I guess, a frame of reference of what they're going through. But it's just wonderful that God is with us and he is with them. And I'm just thinking right now of, Daniel's 3 friends as they went through the fiery furnace, that God was with them in the fire. Nebuchadnezzar saw that there was a 4th man in the fire. The 4th man looked like the Son of God. And that was Jesus in there, in the fire with those boys. And then, they came out unscathed, not smelling of smoke. It's not always going to be like that for every type of persecution, but every single time we can be fully assured that God will never leave us nor forsake us, even to the very end of the age. Yeah. And I think it's just really important that, we pray for these families, that
they stay strong.
They stay faithful to the end, and that their witness is an inspiration to those around them, that, hey, there is something bigger to live for. Like, these guys are completely fearless in that they have experienced this. They could have been, scared back into being Hindus, but they're not. They're choosing to stand firm in their faith. And hey, maybe the local villagers who are Hindu, we don't feel that strength in us. What is it they have that we don't have, and that they can be encouraged to also change?
And that has been a big element of Christianity throughout the ages. So their location is in the Gadchiroli district, in the Midapalli village in the state of Maharashtra. Okay. So let me look into the map here and see where that is. In the meantime, here we go. Maharashtra. India is such a big, it's kind of about in the middle of India, right in the middle.
Somewhere smack bang in the middle.
Yeah. So it would be very cold.
It would be.
I would imagine. But this is the other thing as well. We have to be very, very vigilant about like hate speech laws, vilification laws, conversion practices laws, because when these laws are there, depending on the tide of how it is, well, what do you do if you have like 20 people accusing you of having said something that has offended them? For you to defend yourself and to prove that you're innocent, sometimes can be a very, very costly thing. So this is why these are some of the risks that we run into. Gladly, we are not at that stage in Australia.
But
if the tides start to turn, and there's some hatred or animosity against certain groups, so for example, Christians or whatever is it that you're proclaiming and preaching, that situation is not too far away.
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
And we are now going to be talking to Justin Lawman, our political commentator from Canberra, and he's going to be talking to us about what happened in this last week that is worth of noting. Justin, good morning to you, and happy belated Australia Day to you, my friend.
Yeah, it's back at you, guys. Back at you.
Thank you very much. Justin, what has happened here? A lot has happened since we last spoke, and I want to start with going to Greenland. The last time we talked about Donald Trump was even contemplating military action to secure Greenland the hard way, but I understand that things have changed. What happened?
What's happened? Trump's a negotiator, and I think the whole time his big, extraordinary, we might even military, attack, that's just his negotiation stuff. he announced at the Davos that there's going to be a deal. The problem with that announcement is that the Prime Minister of Denmark doesn't seem to know about that deal. But look, Americans are going to get it. I just think they already have a base up in the north of Greenland for their Star Wars program that is for missile detection and their satellites. So they've had bases there historically. What he's saying now is they just want some areas for bases. It's clearly about their Golden Dome and their submarine detection. They need it militarily, and they're going to get it one way or the other, is what I would say.
Okay, very good. What else? What about the hate speech laws after we spoke about? There was a late-night session at the Parliament, and they managed to approve a revised version of the hate speech bills. What have you made of that?
Well, it blew up the Liberal National Coalition's what it's done, and it kind of was well played by the Prime Minister in the end, because he had been on a hiding to nothing. He had just been getting beaten for weeks after Bondi. These hate speech laws, I think, look, we already had so many of these hate speech laws. I don't like the extent that they're overreaching, and even the inference, if someone doesn't even have to feel it's happened. Let's see what happens in court, but there's a realignment of politics on the right side of politics in Australia at the moment, and I think the shadow of Pauline Hanson is looming large over the Nationals and the Liberals. So we're probably going to see a new leader come the first week of February. We'll see what happens with the Liberals, but it looks like Susan Lay's days might be numbered. We will soon see.
Yeah. All right. And tell us a little bit about this new weapon that President Trump announced in Davos that they used against Venezuela.
I don't know about this new weapon in the sense that it's a secret.
But what if done? What if done?
Are you talking about the directed energy weapon that they seem to use? Yes. And look, they've used sonic weapons. In fact, when the protests happened in front of Parliament House in Australia during COVID, they had a one of these sound sonic weapons there to control the crowd. They didn't use it, but it was there just in case. But this is that the Americans have developed this secret technology. It appears, secrets are secrets, that they used via drones that was able to actually just. There's no shots fired as they're going in to take out Maduro. All his hundreds of soldiers were overcome by just dozens of Delta Force operators because this directed energy. The guys on the ground said that their brains were just mush. They couldn't move. They couldn't do anything. They had effects from this weapon afterwards for days. So whatever this, they're saying it's a directed energy weapon, that it just paralyzes people.
And systems as well, because it looks like all of the radar systems were shut down. So we don't know if they're two separate systems or if it's the two combined in one.
And look, they had the latest tech from China as, anti-aircraft radar. It was a joke. So I think the Russians and the Chinese were really put on notice by that operation, that America's got some stuff that they are really made ineffective by. So it was a bit of a show-off there for the Americans to say, hey, guys, you're on notice. We've got some gear you don't know about.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Wow. That's definitely a big message to send to the world. What about Minnesota? Are we seeing a new Renee Goods case popping up? What's happening in the United States, Justin?
Look, this latest shooting, a guy that there's you can watch the video. Everyone's watching the video. There's, a whole bunch of police wrestling this guy on the ground. He apparently had a weapon with 2 spare magazines, a pistol. He was licensed to own the pistol. The left side of politics over there is calling this a murder by ICE. ICE is saying it was self-defense, that he was going to use the pistol or attempting to use it. All the information has not come out on this, but I think we should step back and see this in the larger battle between these 2 great political forces in the US. The conservative right wing of the Republican side that Donald Trump represents, and the left, the Democrat side. And unfortunately, right across the country, ICE is going to prisons and detaining and removing any illegal immigrants who have been convicted of a crime. In Minnesota, as in other sanctuary cities, they will not allow ICE to go to the prisons. Mm-hmm. So ICE is actually going to the homes of these convicted criminals, people that are illegal and they shouldn't be in the country, but they have committed a crime. Mm-hmm. And so one side here is going to have to blink because it's getting wilder and wilder. The protests are extremely well organised. There are spotters on roofs that are tipping off where to go as they watch ICE go around. It's like a military operation in Baghdad. It's crazy how amped up this has become. The question is, will Donald Trump's side stop deporting these illegals and back away from Minnesota and let it cool down? Or will the other side back away? I'm not seeing anyone backing away from this. And this has the potential to become a big civil conflict where at the moment the left side are telling people to go and get training with guns. There are influencers coming out online. You can see all this stuff. It's being reported in the news. There's a real stepping up, and each side is trying to own the narrative. They're saying ICE is not trained. These are thugs. These are criminals. We're going to put them on trial when we get back in power. It's really bad, guys. It's really bad.
Wow. And I think, there's no coincidence that Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, that he was, supposed to be the new vice president of the United States. So Minnesota, it is a hot spot, for these anti-ICE campaign that they are going through. Justin, my question for you is this: how do you envision? What are some possible scenarios? Of course, we're talking about possibilities here because we can't see the future, but we do see that America is mentioned in Bible prophecy as the last superpower. How do you envision that these, what we're seeing here, could relate to what we see in the Bible, particularly in regards to the role that America is going to have in enforcing a false Sabbath upon the world?
Well, we know how the story ends in Bible prophecy. What we don't know is how we arrive there. Mm-hmm. And so it's important, as you've pointed out, we are speculating on what's going on currently. How this plays out, there are turns and roundabouts and things we know nothing about. But one thing that's become clear to me, this is the world according to Justin. Okay, Skafy.
Okay, gotcha.
Take this with a grain of salt. The king of the north in Daniel 11, the corrupted Christianity, I call it, where they get political power. I believe the populist nationalists are most closely representing that. And that's arising all over the world at the same time. Populist nationalists as a reaction back towards the globalism of the past. Like the Canadian president last week had a real throwdown on Trump to say, hey, we're going to do an alignment with China. So Trump came out yesterday and said, are you? Well, we're going to tariff you 75% of all of their exports in Canada go to the US.
Oh, dear. Wow.
We're going to tariff you 100%. And all of a sudden, Canada said, we're not going to do a deal with China now.
Actually.
Change our minds.
America is increasingly acting like the big superpower it really is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this internal struggle, I call the secular atheist the king of the South. This is a playing out for me between the king of the North and the king of the South on the streets of Minnesota. So we will see.
Wow, that's amazing. And if you, listener, if you're interested, if you're curious more to hear more about what is the role of America in Bible prophecy, if you have never studied particularly the 13th and the 14th chapter of the book of Revelation, we have a resource for you here. If you text me here, #USA, we will send you a Bible study, a link to a Bible study that talks about America in the end times, American Bible prophecy. And you will not believe your eyes when you see how accurate what the Bible talks about, both the forming of America and what's coming up in the end of times. And as Justin said, we know the end. We don't know exactly how we're going to get there, but we know that we are going to get there. So Justin, for those who are listening to this for the first time, what is in a nutshell the role of America in the end of times? How would you summarize it?
The Bible describes it as the lamb-like beast who speaks like a dragon. Lamb-like is Christian, but its behavior is not Christian. And in the end, unfortunately, the sad thing to me is Christians are running to elect senators and elect presidents and congressmen rather than raising up a Billy Graham who's going to preach the gospel. Mm. They're trying to fix their country through laws and politics rather than the preaching of the gospel. And I think that's ultimately what's the great deception of the devil, is to twist Christianity into a political movement instead of a heart transformation.
Yeah.
And that's at the crux of what goes on at the very end.
Yeah, it is quite remarkable to think that the Bible, which is, the foundation of Christianity, the Bible itself says that the greatest enemy against Christians will be a false form of Christianity, an apostate form of Christianity in the end, which is a plot twist that I think that nobody's expecting, except if you haven't read it in the Bible.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe it. If you just take things on face value, you're going to get caught up in one of these two sides and da-da-da-da-da. In the end, there'll only be one side.
Yeah.
And how we get there is the scary thing to me.
Yeah.
How this can all come together, that there'll only be one team and it will be arrayed against God's people.
That's right. Look, Justin, the way that you said it makes so much sense, because the way that these two different movements, the populists and the secularists, they each one frame the other as the evil of the world. But then in God's narrative, God says, hey, both of them are actually unbeknownst to them, but they're serving Satan's purposes. So the truth is different from what the main narratives are. And you can only find them in the law of God and in the words of Jesus.
Amen.
Justin, thank you so much for bringing us the updates for this week. Well, let's see if this coming week will be a little bit quieter, or if we're going to have, even another escalation for next week. Thank you so much for talking to us. Again, Justin has his own 45-minute program every Friday at 4:30 p.m. It's called The Perfect Storm. You've got to catch it. He goes into all of these subjects with more depth. This is Alan Jackson, Only Trust.
Thanks for being a part of the Faith FM family. Join our community on Facebook or get in touch at 1-800-FAITH-FM.